So, hello, and now it is time for our monthly publishing slot with Mr. Porter Anderson. Hi there, Porter.
Hi, Orna. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Where are you today? You're always somewhere different. Where are you today?
I'm at my base in Tampa, thank heavens, which is kind of wonderful. It's been a lot of travel lately, so I'm glad to be here.
Always a lot of travel for you. I like to hear when you're home in that lovely place in Florida of yours. So that's good. Have a nice rest. But in the meantime,
Last time we were in Frankfurt, as a matter of fact.
sorry.
Last time we were in Frankfurt, weren't we?
That's right. Last time we were together in Frankfurt, which is always good. And now with the magic of the internet, we can be me in London and you in Florida, and we can still bring the news to people who are interested in knowing what has happened in publishing over the last month. That is most of interest to authors, and you're the man who knows. So first off, what's your first interesting snippet of publishing for authors in the last month?
Well, there's a new offering that I think looks interesting, but it's going to bear some looking at it. It may be something that Ally wants to actually check out with its Watchdog program. A company named Palladium, that comes from the Palatine Hill in Rome. They'd have to explain why they've named it this, but they're based in Copenhagen, not in Rome. And Klaus and Rie Rosenkilde have done a really interesting job of putting together a program that's designed to let self-publishing authors get themselves into subscription services in different parts of the world. As you know, most of the subscription services out there tend to draw from publishers and get their material that way, and it's hard for single agent independent authors to move into some of that, and they were smart enough to realize this. They had been running for about 15 years. One of the trade houses in Copenhagen decided to sell that and open this. And it's interesting. Right now they have some of our favorites on board, like 24 Symbols, which Justo Hidalgo runs, our friend in Madrid. Wonderful mobile ebook subscription service that's in many parts of the world. And in fact, Mark Zuckerberg of you know what uses it as one of the services that he brings to his Internet Everywhere service around the world. So there's a humanitarian interest in 24 Symbols. But 24 Symbols is just one of the subscription services that Palladium in Copenhagen is working with now to put independent authors in. They provide an advance, not a very big one, only about $50, but they'll negotiate with you on that. And then they provide monthly royalties and statements, so you know where something's selling around the world, where you're being subscribed to, and you get payments back. This is very new, and as one of your good Ally members and our friend, Jane Steen, has pointed out, there are probably a couple of things they already need to look at in their contract. We're not sure there's a good termination clause as to how you would come back out of the deal if you wanted to. So she's talking with them, and I think that they seem very open. They want to make sure, they're just new, I think, to working in the indie space, and they do seem to want to make sure that everything goes exactly as indies need it to. But I think it bears looking at, and I think it's nice because so many startups seem to do something we've already seen tried and failed. In this case, actually, I hadn't seen anybody think of, let's get independent authors into subscription services on a global basis.
Fantastic. No, it sounds great. And is it curated if they're giving in advance and so on?
It is, which is one of the attractions to the services, of course. Instead of just take everything we've got, they're actually picking and choosing. And so you do go through a vetting service or experience in which they look at your stuff first. But I like that. I think everybody feels better when it's curated.
Absolutely, but is it curated on the basis of sales, or is it just a minimum sort of level of quality of editorial and design, and a reasonably written book?
Yeah, I don't have their full criteria, but my sense right now is that they're working mainly on quality and not on sales, because the sales issue is just, of course, all over the map for everybody. Whereas I think that what they need to do is promise the subscription services that they're getting something that's valid enough to stand beside what may be coming in from trade publishers. So certainly at the outset, I think that's where they're going. As they become more successful, and they're looking to have about 5,000 titles, I think, within the next year or so, at that point they may become choosier in terms of track record for something on the market. But right now I think it's a quality call as to how you get in.
Superb. Really interesting. Okay, number two.
Number two, let's talk about Book Expo for a moment. In the United States, there are three, we think of it as three major trade shows. around the world every year. There's London Book Fair, which this year is in March, by the way, the middle of March, not April.
Hooray!
There's Frankfurt. Oh boy, is there Frankfurt, which you and I have just done in October. Biggest in the world, best in the world. I love it. But there's also what's been called Book Expo America, and even now we're calling it BEA, but it's losing America from its name. Interestingly enough, they're going to start calling it just Book Expo. We don't know whether we have to say B or BE, so we're continuing to say BEA. But the A is going away as far as the full name goes. What they're trying to do is emphasize a more international approach. Now, this is what the organizers are telling us. This is very new. They feel that they've lost some of their international cachet, and I think that's right. I think that of the three that I've just mentioned, they have been the least useful, perhaps, to people offshore, people not from the United States, just because there is such a preponderance of the material coming in from the States. And I appreciate the fact they want to make a change in that. They want to do more with their market focus, which is what they call the guest of honor, or the country that comes in to be featured every year, which is great. There is another that's rising. Beijing is becoming very strong now, and is certainly the fourth, and may actually be replacing Book Expo, which may be helping to push them a little bit to make these changes. But in the process, they're also doing some interesting things about trying to hone down the 2 days of the fair now, not 3, but 2. It's getting smaller. So about 6,000 industry badges, which is not very many. There was a point at which those badges would have come to close to 11,000 a few years ago, and they've been going down. They've been losing some steam, particularly last year when they moved to Chicago for 1 year, and you and I were both there, and we remember how that went. Their attendance dropped by more than a third, we now know. They didn't want to say that for a while for perfectly understandable reasons, but it didn't go so well. They're back in New York in May, the very end of May, their usual slot at the Javits, but they'll do only 2 trade show days. They'll have a preliminary day of conferences that will be focused on the international scene, and then they will limit, when I'm saying industry badges, I mean booksellers, other retailer types, who will come in and meet the publishers, look at their books, get their signed copies from those trade authors, and then head home to sell them out of their own stores and other retail outlets. That's who they're putting a cap of about 6,000 on. They're eliminating the cluster of conferences that once stood around the event, like the Bloggers Conference and You Publish You, the Independent Authors Conference. That actually was eliminated last year. Many people didn't realize that in Chicago, it was gone there. It was turned into a series of events sort of in the space you were in, where some of the author services groups were clustered on the floor, and not much was there, but it was not the full conference. And this year it's not at all the conference. They will have the availability for independent authors to buy the table on the floor in a little area.
But of course, bring us your money and we will bring you nothing in return.
Exactly, for a lot of money. It's some $2,000 or so, maybe more this year. You get a table, you get a couple of chairs, and you're in a sort of corral where you're cordoned off a little bit, but everybody can come visit, certainly. But I haven't thought this has been very successful necessarily for some of the authors, and so they're still, I think, searching for their author connection now, particularly as they make these changes. So it's going to be interesting to see this new, smaller Book Expo experience come together, and to see how it plays, particularly in terms of what independent authors are looking for. But we've talked before, you and I, Orna, quite a bit. You've been so helpful in Frankfurt with our Independent Author Day there that we do, and thank you for that again for coming this year to speak. It's hard for these trade shows. They were never developed for the independent author, and to get something viable for those authors into these settings that are really designed for the trade publishers to meet their trade retailers has proven very difficult for all of them. London is still the best. They do their author HQ, I think we're calling it now, series all week long. It's big. It's plenty of good information going across back and forth, and good people speaking. So to this day, you guys there in London have the best effort. LBF has really led the way.
I agree, absolutely. And I think that's simply, honestly, because the will is there and the understanding is there that of what is needed from an author perspective, you know, at the different levels, and that this is quite a sophisticated group of people now. And BEA certainly has never got it right. The best of the author area that you're talking about, the best one was the first one actually, and then it has steadily disimproved. It's quite a sad arena now. I felt last year that the authors are tucked off away where, you know, there really isn't any sort of serious support for them, despite them having paid quite a significant amount of money, as you say, to be there. So yeah, we will be watching that very closely. And while UPubU was very, you know, problematic at lots of levels in terms of conferencing, it's a shame to see, you know, nothing devoted to this growing segment of writers. It seems a strange sort of way to go at it. So yeah,
it is. If I may, I'll put in a quick plug, as a matter of fact, for something we hope will help take up the slack. Digital Book World, DBW, this year is producing a day for indie authors. It's called DBW Indie Author. Jane and I of Hot Sheet are actually programming it, and we're delighted that you're going to be coming in to speak in New York with us. And that's on January 19 in New York City at the Hilton at 6th and West 53rd. And we would love to have any of your viewers come and join us. We'd be very excited about that. It's the first time DBW has produced a day for authors, and this is specifically for independent authors. We have a terrific program, so we'd really like people to come.
Great. No, I know people are coming for sure.
Yeah, it's looking good. The sales are going well, and we're excited because we want to make a good showing of this so that DBW feels, well, this is well worth it, and can pick up what Book Expo seems to have just dropped at this point. Let's get to one more issue, right, before our time runs out.
Before we have to run away, exactly.
Yes, well, I'm going to raise the awful name. Here comes Trump. Sorry. As you know, we
have taken America out of their name.
Yes, we may be taking America out of a lot of things here. We are having an experience here that is new to us. And it's not easy. We're all going through a great deal of difficulty with this right now. And when I say all, I mean even our conservative Republican friends are really in dire straits with this whole surprise result of the election. They did not see it coming, and it's clear now, particularly now after the election, that what they would have expected and wanted in a candidate may not be what they've got. And this may be just as difficult for them as it is for the rest of us. So it's an interesting moment of changeover and transition we're in. One of the things that we've had come about as a result of this, and I'm just clicking over here, that's why I keep looking this way to make sure I pull up the right part of the hot sheet, we'd love you to subscribe, is from the Authors Guild, who was very quick, a really wonderful service, jumped right in to start answering some of the questions that we're all getting from authors about what might this mean. The real answer is we don't know. I mean, in almost every level in the United States, we're suffering with the big we don't know problem. But some of the things that they're bringing up as the questions we need to look at, which is the proper way to look at this right now, is what will happen with tech and the government's relationship with tech. And of course, so much of that's affecting now digital publishing. Net neutrality. We are all functioning. You and I right now are talking on the internet. Will internet traffic continue to be treated equally as has been arranged so far, or could that be affected? Intellectual property, what kind of enforcement's going to be on the horizon, because we have not been sure that freedom of speech is something that our new president-elect is heavily interested in. He may be. I want to be careful in saying that we just don't have an accurate read here. But there are many things that are in flux right now. And one of the biggest questions for our authors here in the United States, of course, is insurance. The Affordable Health Care Act, sometimes called Obamacare, is what a lot of our authors are using for their medical insurance. The Authors Guild may in fact have to consider producing a kind of insurance program of its own for its membership if in fact affordable health care is shot down. And our president-elect has made it clear that he would like to see it deeply changed. He's waffling on some of those points now, saying that part of it would be good to keep, maybe not wipe out the whole thing. We just don't know. And it may be a point at which the Authors Guild, which is of course our version of the Society of Authors, a service organization, an advocacy organization for writers, may need to step in. But I think probably key in all of our minds is the freedom of expression thing, particularly as it hits journalists, myself and my colleagues. That is where we would first feel curtailment of freedom of the press. There are big battles right now between the Trump transition team and the major media in terms of our protective pool, as we call it, that's supposed to be with Trump all the time. He's not allowing that so far. Meetings are going on, a lot of talks going on, but we're not there yet. And this is extraordinary for us to even have this called into question. So I think the Guild is to be commended, because they came out with a very fine article, which you can read more about it at Hot Sheet, laying out some of these pressure points we need to keep our eyes on. There may be no problem. We just don't know yet in most of these cases where things will go. It is a time of great uncertainty.
It's certainly, you're definitely not wrong in saying that, and thank you for laying it out so clearly, and for not jumping to the assumption that it is all going to be dreadful. But the indications are worrying. There is no doubt about that.
They are. And one of the things I'll just say quickly on it, that we want to be sure, as all of us talk about this, Jane and I and all of my colleagues are trying to be sure that as we speak of this, we remember there are writers who voted for Trump. There are people who firmly believe in the kind of America he seems to envision. There are many who don't. And I think that one of the most difficult things that a creative community like ours goes through at times is when such a sea change in terms of political basis occurs. Suddenly, we need to be mindful that some of our folks do not see this as negative. I will say again that most of the conservatives are in just as big a bath of uncertainty as any of us are. I come from a more liberal side myself, of course, but that doesn't mean that I'm in any less, that I have any better idea of what's going on than they do. But we need to remember that, and we're trying all to be very careful and to understand that we're all in this together, and that only, in fact, by trying to heal the massive divisions that have been created by this election are we going to be able to pull through this in any way that makes sense. So, as with your Brexit vote, this is very difficult for us all.
It's certainly a new change, yeah, and we shall look forward to you keeping us abreast of it and what it means for authors as next year unfolds, particularly.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Porter, and of course, anybody who's interested in reading more and going into some of these issues, and indeed more news and other fine things, can find you at the Hot Sheet. So just tell people where to get that and how to subscribe and so on.
Indeed, please just go to hotsheetpub.com, hotsheetpub.com, and you can also find us on Twitter at hotsheetpub. We would love to have your subscription. $59 for the year, and we give you every other week an industry assessment precisely devised for authors from the professional standpoint, with no drama and no hype. That's pretty rare in America right now, let me tell you. And let me wish you an American happy Thanksgiving, Orna.
Oh, yes, thank you. We are grateful for you coming in every month to tell us the news. And yeah, have a fabulous Thanksgiving. Will you be there in Florida for it?
Yes, we're going to be rather desperately giving thanks for everything we can possibly think of right now.
An attitude of gratitude will be found.
Indeed. It'll be a big one. So,
well, good luck with that. And
thanks much.
We'll talk to you again.
Okay.
Thanks, Porter. Take care.
Thanks, you. You too, Orna. Bye.
Bye.